Hey, it's Marthea Pitts, the MSW coach, and I am back for another episode of my podcast, Macro Social Work Your Way. And I'm so excited because today I have a Micro to Macro Career Accelerator alum who literally has just wrapped up her time inside of the accelerator last week. And today is going to be a little different focus of our conversation. Normally, I have people on who have gotten a macro job because they're celebrating this big macro career win. But today I asked my guest to come on because her career win as a result of being inside of the accelerator is something a little different, but it's even more monumental. It's the piece that a lot of you who listen to the podcast never get to really get a bird's eye view on, or I really don't spend a lot of time dissecting it. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about it, which is the career clarity piece. I'm just going to set the conversation up a little bit before I start my conversation with Celeste. But for the most part, when you all find me, you are at either a crossroads in your career where you're not really certain about how you can bring this bigger vision of yours that you have to life around either doing macro work, if you use those words or even have those words. I didn't have those words when I set out on my journey to want to do more and have more impact. Or you're at a crossroads where you're like, I just feel like I should be doing more. So that's primarily for the people who are not very familiar with the macro side of social work, which is not uncommon for social workers. And so sometimes the people who are familiar with the macro side of our profession, when they find me, when asked what type of macro job they want, they always 110% say they want a policy job. Very rare. I could honestly say nobody comes to mind right now that I could think of who found my work, who found my services, the Micro to Macro Career Accelerator. And when I asked them what type of macro job they want, did they say something different than policy? And that's largely because the social work profession largely overemphasizes only policy as an aspect of macro work. However, what I teach my coaching clients, and this is where I put on my workforce development hat. If you don't know, I'm a 3-time award-winning workforce development career counselor and macro social worker. I study the job market. I study labor market data. Right, I've worked in DC with political leaders, helping them design equitable workforce development initiatives and efforts, right? So my work is more than I'm just a social worker who has had a macro job. No, I do this professionally. And so with me being able to put on that hat and really use that lens, I'm able to look at what other industries, organizations, types, body of work can social workers easily transition into, being that we are very mission driven, being that we have this diverse set of like background experience, be it clinical or non-clinical. We have worked on the front lines with clients, with participants, whatever the terminology you use for them, and just align with our code of ethics and interests. I look at a lot of different organizations, industries, scopes of work, professions even, to look at where could a social worker like create their own career lane in that area. And so me being able to do that over the last 10 plus years, I've compiled this very exhaustive list of organization types, industries, transferable experiences is what I call them. You all generally know them as skills, transferable skills that social workers have that can allow you to pivot into a completely unrelated area of interest. Because even though when social workers find me, they say, I want to do policy, right? When I start asking questions and I take you all through my career clarity framework, what we quickly find out is that you're not interested in what it takes to do policy, right? Policy is very bureaucratic in nature. There's a lot of reading. There's tons of writing that's involved. There is constant need for change because it's going through these different chains of command and getting scrapped and being added to and being taken away. And so I say that as somebody who's also had a policy job. Normally, when people find me, they're like, I want a policy job. However, your innate interests don't align with what it will take to do that work. I always joke that social workers, a lot of you are creatives at heart. You like to cook, you like to bake, you like to do DIY projects. A lot of you like to be out in nature. If you're working a policy job, it requires you to be at a desk in a cubicle from 9 to 5, and you're reading all of this very like heavily dense material, and that just doesn't align. So I say that to say that when social workers find me, they're always like policy, and that's when I'm like, you need career clarity, right? And sometimes I get people who say, I don't really know what I want to do. I don't even really know what my population or issue is that I'm interested in. I just know that I should be doing more, or I want to increase my impact. And so with that, I take everybody as the first part of working with me inside of the Micro to Macro Career Accelerator, which is my 3-month group career coaching program, where I teach social workers how to identify, apply, and interview for their dream macro job. The first 30 to 45 days of that time inside of the accelerator is spent going through the career clarity framework, which is my 3 Ps framework, where we specifically look at your outside interests. What do you do in your free time? We look at what do you want your day-to-day work to look like, which is the purpose, and then what population and or issue that you want your work to center on. And the reason I combine those 3 different areas is because the passions, if you strategically infuse just one of maybe your 15 passions into your work, it automatically increases your job satisfaction. I'm not saying you'll be happy about the fact that you have to work, but at the very minimum, you should not be dreading going to work. You should not be crying going to work, coming home from work, right? I've been there, done that, experienced all of that. When it comes to the purpose and what you want your day-to-day, your like your day-to-day duties, so that's a point that's important as well for alignment. Again, we have a lot of people who are creatives, but they're sitting in an office all day where they're literally pushing papers. There's no creative outlet for them. This is why you feel so misaligned, is because you're doing work that does not support what you need innately, right? So this is way beyond just looking at the external things of your degree. What type of job can I get based on my degree, based on my profession as a social worker? And it's really, really tapping into you on an identity level. And then the third P of the 3 Ps framework is population and issue. I always tell people that social workers should not be working with every population, because you can actually do more harm than good if you're working with a population or on an issue that you're not in support of, passionate about, insert your word. So we look at all of those 3 areas to really get clear on what it is that you want to do for work. Again, moving from what can I do to what do I want to do based on who I am as a human, what my interests are, what my passions are, and what I want to be known for in the world of work. And Celeste, when she was going through that career clarity phase, again, no one moves past point A of career clarity until they're clear on what the goal is inside of the accelerator. We don't talk about a resume. I don't teach them how to job search. We're not talking about anything until we have really set the clear intention of what do you need in your job to feel fulfilled on a deeper level than this is what I can do as a social worker. And I gave you all that context for a very specific reason, because today Celeste and our conversation will be focused around her journey of going through the accelerator, specifically the career clarity piece, and where it's led her to today and what she's gotten very crystal clear on that she should be doing in her career. So thank you, Celeste, for sitting through all of that, because I know you have heard that over and over again. You know it like the back of your hand. But introduce yourself to the listeners. Tell them who you are as a human. So maybe like what you like to do in your free time, and then what you do professionally currently.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. First of all, I'm just excited to be here. Thanks for having me here. So, my name is Celeste Rodriguez, and a little bit about myself. I'm so passionate in salsa dancing. That is my main thing, what I do, what I try to do at least once a week, even twice a week. Sometimes I push it a little bit. But there's something about dancing that makes me feel free, and it does clear my mind, and I get to go back to work and just do my job again. And I realized the importance, even in this program, on being doing passionate things. And I realized, hey, I have been doing it a little bit just by salsa dancing. So that's a really big thing that I enjoy doing. And the second question, I want to make sure I answer it. Yeah. So I currently am a clinician, so a mental health therapist. And I've been doing it for basically 3 years. I was a student for one full year and then full time worker as 2 years. So that's why I say 3 years. And I do work with the older adult population. And I do work also with adults. So it's a little bit of adults, but mainly Spanish speaking older adults.
I love that. How do you describe your direct practice, like the process of, let me back up. How do you describe your experience of or process of looking for macro jobs before coming inside of the accelerator? What did that look like for you? How are you job searching?
Yeah. I laugh because I feel like maybe everyone does this if they're looking for macro social work jobs. But for me, I literally put macro social work jobs. That is how I I Googled it, and even on Indeed, like I tried to search it because I realized I don't know how to research search for macro social work positions. And I was like, let me start here. So when I did that, I realized I either had to get another clinical job. There was a lot of clinical positions, and I also needed to get another certificate, which is the LCSW. So there's this like push, which is not a bad thing if that's what you want to do, right? I just was not sure if that was the path that I wanted to go towards when I would research macro social work positions, jobs, just a lot of the positions that I saw was more case management positions and clinician positions, mental health therapist positions. Yeah.
I love that. Most definitely. That challenge that you described is common for many people. That's why a lot of social workers don't know they have other options as far as jobs. But it sounds like you knew about the macro side of social work, the macro side of our work. I love that. How did you learn about the micro to macro career accelerator? And what were your thoughts when you learned about my program,
Mhm.
and what helped you sign up for the program? Was it
Yeah. No, I love it. I love the question. Honestly, I was on YouTube and I just put how to search macro social work positions. I was just very basic on like how to start it. And you popped up right away. I'm like, okay, that was the first time I ever heard of you and didn't really know much about you. So I heard one of your podcast videos. I don't know which one it was. I can't remember which one it was. However, I do remember you explaining what you did in the beginning here a little bit, right? On if you feel unaligned, right? Where I honestly felt like you were talking directly to me, and maybe others feel that way too when you're sharing these, just what you do in your program. But what stood out to me was when you were saying if you feel unaligned or if you want to do more. That's exactly what you said today is exactly what stood out to me because I do feel like, yes, I enjoy doing clinical work. I'm not going to say I don't. I really do. However, I feel unaligned and I know there's more that I am capable of. And I did not know what I was capable of before I until I started your program. And that's my honest answer because I what I did know though was I was unaligned. That's why I was researching. That's why I was like, okay, who's Marthea? I have no idea who she is. And she's saying things that I know I need to hear. So the universe somehow brought you to me. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk about your journey inside of the program. So you paid me your money. You started with cohort 16. Let's break down. Did you have any hesitations like when you first started? And then I have a question after that.
Yeah, yeah. I of course had hesitation because I went through the my MSW program. I paid a lot of money for it, right? And I did invest in myself and I still feel unaligned, right? And that's why I was like, man, what am I doing? I know I'm in the right path. I know I'm in this, I'm supposed to be a social worker, but am I supposed to be a macro social worker instead or a like work meso area, right? I enjoy direct practice, but there's more. So when there was this hesitation of okay, am I willing to invest in myself, right? Because it was scary. I did that already. And with the MSW program that I was in. So there, of course, was this hesitancy of, okay, do I want to invest in this? And me knowing I don't have, I want to learn more about what macro is. So that's why I was like, do I do it? Do I not? So yeah.
I love that. I'm going to ask my next question, but I'm going to give the listeners a little context and who's ever watching the video. So the first 30 to 45 days of your time inside of the Micro to Macro Career Accelerator is spent doing the career clarity work, and that's using my proven strategies of you take a career assessment, right? We're not just shooting in the dark. We're actually looking at data. So you take a career assessment to get clear on what type of work environment would you thrive in? What type of like dynamics do you need in an organization? And then during that 30 to 45-day period is where I take you through the guided 3Ps framework to get clarity on what I explained at the beginning of the call. And then from the 45-day to 60-day mark is where you are spending time doing what is technically called career exploration, is where you're going out into the job market to find organizations and jobs, roles that will allow you to do the type of work or work on the population and issue that you say you want to support and in the way that you want to do it on a day-to-day basis. Also in that 45 to 60-day mark is where I teach you in a one-on-one session how to write your macro resume and cover letter. And then from the 60 to 90-day mark is where I teach you how to master macro interviews and career plan for your next macro job, right? Be it your first macro job or your third or fourth or fifth one. I teach you how to career plan because a lot of social workers get stuck in their direct practice case management jobs because they don't have a career plan. They don't have a plan of action. Just like anything in life, you need a plan. You need one also for your career. If not, you're going to go off the rails and not know what your next move should be, when, and how to do. So for Celeste, in the period of career clarity, that's when she experienced her career win. And she really stayed there for a very intentional reason because she got crystal clear on what she needed in her career based on her interests. Celeste, please break down for the people what the career clarity phase was like for you. Any aha moments, discoveries that you made. Give us all of the details. Walk us through it.
Yeah. Okay. So the clarity piece, honestly, for me in the beginning, I was not taking my time because I wanted to make sure I was doing all the modules, all the steps. And there's a point where you need to talk about your passions, the issues you want to work with, the population. And I was like, yeah, I think I want to do this. You all know this too. And that was my first time doing that. So I was like, yeah, okay, I did this next, check that box off. And then I went to the next box. And then when I went to the next, I was like, wait, when we had to do the personal mission statement, right? Eventually, I don't know if you want to talk about that eventually, I got stuck because I was like, wait, I don't know what population I want to work with, because that's when you really get serious about what I want to really work with, what my pitch is, if with jobs that I want to work with, right? And I was like, no, I need to take this really serious. So I had to back up again and start again and go back to the clarity piece on, okay, what does this mean to me? Passions. How is it even possible for me to have passions in my social work, macro social work position? I didn't even think that was even something I could do. Yeah, I love working. I was more general, like I can wear different hats. That's where I came in. That's what case managers do. They wear different hats. So for me to finally put myself first and say, no, I get to really figure this out and see what populations I want to work with and what I really want to do as a macro social worker. I realized I needed to slow down because other people were in module 2, module 3. And I was like, oh no, I'm barely back at module 1. And I was putting that like pressure, a little pressure on myself, but I had to take a step back. And for me, when I slowed down, that's when I really had these aha moments, right? Where it's possible for me to have these passions in my job. Oh, wow. Like I could only work with women, like when all my case management roles were both, right? And I think that's where I had these aha moments is me realizing I get to put myself first finally. And in it, because as a case manager, you wear all the hats. Like you have to wear all the hats to make sure everyone gets the services. And I'm realizing I did that part already. Now I'm going to put myself first and just taking my time with the clarity piece was so important for me. Yeah.
I love that. I was taking my notes. So
Yeah.
I first want to commend you on your willingness to slow down and
Yeah.
realize that you needed to go back. But before that, you verbally saying out loud that you were, in my words, like comparing yourself to the
Yeah.
other in the cohort in
Mhm.
regards to where they were in their journey inside of the accelerator. That's major, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
that doesn't just show up inside of the accelerator, that shows up with you as with all of us
Mm.
where you get to a certain point in your career where you see other people. I always talk about, I'm always transparent about my own journey, like before
Mhm.
back to school, things like that, looking at other people's careers and being envious of it because I'm working in a call center and making pennies, barely scraping by. But there's people in these very prestigious roles, and they're executive directors and CEOs of nonprofits. And so I've been there before where you look at them and you're like, I want to be doing that. However, the career clarity framework forces you to focus on you and
Yep.
get clear on what you want. And so when I created this framework, it was in my own pivot to my first macro job. And what I quickly realized, and it's been refined even more over the years, is that no, I don't want to be anyone's executive director of a nonprofit. I don't want to be a nonprofit CEO. That doesn't appeal to me, largely because I pull back the veil and I know what it takes to do that. And I'm not willing to do it because, again, my goals for my personal life are very different than other people's. Like I want a job where I can make my money and I can go home at the end of the day and I can have a certain level of autonomy and I don't have to be on call. Like I know what my life is set up a very type of way where I want a life of ease. I don't want to have to be battling 24/7 around the clock and doing all. So I say that to say for someone listening that Celeste isn't the only one. We all do it on some level if you're being real brutally honest with yourself, right? You look at, especially when, again, up until when you're in a certain point of your career where you're crystal clear about what it is that you want to do, you look at people and you're like, I want to do that, or I should be doing that, or I should have that. And that is a dangerous game to play, because what will happen, and I see this with a lot of social workers who work with me and who don't work with me, right? Is that people have built their careers, which is also blend into your personal life, have built these whole lives for themselves based off of someone else's career dream, and they hate what they do. They hate what they do and they don't know how to get out of it. So I encourage you not to do that, right? Run your own race. I know it's harder than said, especially when you don't really know what your options are. That's why I have the Micro to Macro Career Accelerator to teach you what your options are other than the social service director, other than the CEO, other than the blah, blah, blah. So I commend you on your willingness to acknowledge that, first of all, but then also more than that, to slow down and go back, right? Because this is for everyone else. People come inside of the accelerator for different reasons. Not everyone's outcome is a job offer, right? I had three cohorts back to back. I think it was cohort 7, it may have been 6, 7, and 8. It was a filled with a bunch of clinical social workers. They were coming through the accelerator just to learn about what are my options outside of clinical work, right? And like in their feedback of inside of the accelerator, it was all about, I didn't know, I was excited to learn about what else I can do and how I can position myself for this. It was the career clarity piece. So Celeste, you talked about, so I wanted to name that. Let me say that everyone's outcome, like goal for being inside of the accelerator, is different. For some people, it's confidence building. For some people, it's learning how to job search. For some people, it's clarity. For some people, it's knowing how to apply and master the interviews or career plan. Everyone's goal post is different. So Celeste, you took us through your journey of the career clarity phase and like your aha moments of realizing, in doing this, I don't have to wear 1,001 hats. I can
Mhm.
specialize in the thing.
Yep.
Let's flip our talking points and tell the
Yeah.
people like where you landed as far as your clarity and what you really wanted.
Want to do. Yeah, of course. Honestly, it took time to get here, but I'm really excited to share with everyone that taking majority of my time in the clarity piece, I realized that I will work with women and help women increase their confidence through storytelling, through increasing their skills, and through inner healing. And the last point I realized is also building community. So those 4 points for me very important. And part of that is the journey that I'm in. That's where I'm learning that, whoa, this is what's helping me increase my confidence. Honestly, increasing my confidence to even be on this podcast. I never thought I would be on this. So the whole point for me is to really focus on just helping decrease this confidence gap that I see within myself and with women, and just making sure women understand who they are, what their potential is supposed to be here in this world, what they want to achieve in this world. And when we don't have that confidence, we have a lot of blocks and barriers, and it's so difficult, right, to do the thing that we're meant to do or what we want to do. So these aha moments, these wins, what I realized what I meant to do as a macro social worker is focus on storytelling, focus on eventually creating my own retreats, right, for women to come and build the community and really heal their inner selves and really blossom because we cannot dim our lights any longer.
I love that. I love that. And I enjoy that because it's so needed, especially around the piece of like career confidence, leadership development, even though I know Celeste is talking about it from a very different aspect. But for me in my workforce development brain, it's important when we talk about women right? Because your population is women in the achievement of lifelong self-sufficiency, right?
Yes.
Because it severely determines your lifelong earning potential. But even more than that, for you to show up in this world as a whole person and not be like compromising yourself on every turn. So I love how you like got clarity around it. Can you talk about, because this is a very like real piece for people that I'm getting ready to talk about. Can you talk about where you get when you gave yourself permission? Because I know this wasn't, and for me, people, the career clarity framework, right? It's not me pulling a revelation out of the sky. It's me helping you tap back into something that
Mhm.
you knew all along, but you abandoned because the world told
Mhm.
you it wasn't possible. So can you
Mhm.
talk about like when you gave yourself permission or when you, whatever the process looked like for you to be like, this is a real thing and I'm going to pursue it?
Yeah. For me is just the whole year of 2024. I was just a little background too, because it'll answer your question. I 2024 was the year of I was going through fears, just with my personal life, with my career life, right? And even choosing to join your program, I went through a fear. I was like, I'm going to invest in myself. I know this is going to support me, and I did it. But I gave myself, to answer that question, that permission when I knew it was more fear based, that I needed to go through it again. Because there's a difference when you're settling, when you really don't want to do something, and when you're like light up and it lights you up and you're like, whoa, I'm just scared. I'm just really scared to do it, but I know it's something I want to do. And that's when I gave myself permission to, I just need to learn how to create a business. I just need to learn to do these things. I can do it. I just need guidance and maybe a mentor, right? I need this. I basically told myself that I gave myself that permission when I recognized it was more fear based for me. And I told myself, nope, it can't, fear cannot stop me from doing this. I'm already in this program. I'm understanding my passions, my populations, and just with the 3P exercises. And honestly, going back when I doubt, that helps too. Going back to, okay, what is my 3Ps? What are my passions? To help me understand that no, this is correct. This is meant for, I'm meant to do this because it's aligning with my 3Ps and my personal mission statement as well. But overall, that fear, I realized, no, I have to just go through it. Yeah.
I love that. I want
Mhm.
to pause for a moment and talk about Celeste got to the point where she learned all of the things that we teach inside of the accelerator, but specifically during the job searching, she learned how to find jobs. This is when she was still on the track of, I'm going to find a job that allows me to do this with an organization that focuses on the type of work that I want to focus on, before she shifted to the, I'm going to become a
Yeah.
consultant of some type. And so talk about that time where you found that first job and you were like, oh my goodness, this is everything that I would love to do. Can you talk about like how you felt emotionally about that? And then I'm
Yeah.
going to ask you a part two about, I think it was like the second job you found where you realized this
Mm.
really isn't it. But where
Okay.
were you that very first job?
So the first job, when I was like researching, I realized it was through storytelling, right? And that's a big piece of mine. It wasn't only focused on women though, but I was like, whoa, these exist. Like I didn't even realize there was these jobs that existed of storytelling in a macro setting, right? And when I was doing the search, I realized that it's there's skill building, right? Which is part of my passions, right? And community, right? And I was like, oh, okay, things are for me. And emotionally, I felt okay. I felt actually nervous job searching, but when I found this position, I felt pretty excited because it existed. These jobs do exist. And the format, the way that you, Marthea, teach it did help me understand how to job search macro social work positions. And honestly, I felt very hopeful too, because I'm like, okay, this is why I invested in your program. Like this, the way you, the step by step model, the way you do it, it was working. It did work for me. And so that was the first. I felt very hopeful. Yeah.
Good. I love that. Hopeful. Most definitely. I always tell people like when you find your people or find your thing and realize that other people are talking about, because when you are by yourself and you don't think it's a real thing, you think that you're the only one that talk about it from that lens, right? Or from those intersecting like different worlds. But when you find your community that other people are talking about this thing and there's national, international work that supports it, it's a great feeling. And I love when you all experience that first for the first time, because that's when the true paradigm shift happens as far as my work is bigger than
Mhm.
direct practice, case
Yeah.
management work. I can do more, I can have more impact. I want to talk about the second job that you found. I may be confusing them at this point, but there was a second job. It was the last job that you found where you, again, for the listeners, I'm not just teaching you how to find a job, I'm teaching you how to think and make critical decisions regarding your career. Right.
Mhm.
I'm teaching you how to think when it comes to this. And the primary way that I'm teaching you how to think and make these decisions regarding your career is from a strategic angle, right? Making certain that it aligns with who you are as an individual, that it meets your non negotiables, that it meets your long-term goals and desires that you want to have in your career. So for Celeste, when you found that second job and you begin to dissect it because you learned how to read a job description and you're looking at like your 3 Ps and your mission statement, what can you talk about like when you realize the work that I'm envisioning won't be inside of the system? I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to be an outsider. Like what
Yeah.
were some of the things that came into play that made you really realize
Yeah.
this really support my philosophy to the work?
I love that question. I think when I started researching still storytelling positions, right, increasing individuals like skills and stuff, but a lot of the positions they wanted me to market that specific organization, right? Like market everything around that piece. And not that I didn't believe in the organization's mission statement, that's part of it. I enjoyed it, but I started realizing like I have my own mission that I want to do. And I love their ideas of doing storytelling and all these stuff to market their what they're trying to represent, right? And then I started realizing, but I don't want to market theirs. I want to market what I want to focus on, what I want to build, right? And what I want to do. And it was a scary thought of, whoa, that is too big for you, Celeste. Wait, hold on. And I'm being honest, it was a very scary thought, but I'm like, I'm already here. I if people are able to brand themselves, just how every like what I'm researching, I want to do that. I'm capable of doing that and really adding all my passions that I want to do, right? I didn't mention it before, but I'm slowly writing children's books for a reason, right? I'm trying to heal my inner child self through that and support other women to do not the same, but find their own way to heal their inner selves. So I realized, okay, I was meant to find these organizations because they were expanding my mind on what I want to do for myself, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Does most definitely. And I again kudos
Yeah.
to you
Yeah.
for being brave enough to
Yeah.
say, this is what I thought I wanted inside of the system, but ultimately it doesn't match like my philosophy to the work
Yes.
and how I want to show up in the world. And I'm okay with abandoning this initial goal,
Yeah.
because a lot of people are not brave enough to do that. And I'm not talking in like hypotheticals, I'm talking about in real world every
Mhm.
day. I talk to
Yeah.
social workers all the time who have built their lives around this initial goal, but they are not strong enough to say, this no longer serves me, or I no
Yeah.
longer agree with it, or I no longer want to do it. And I'm talking to the people now because Celeste know this, and this is all around that whole part of, I've invested my time, I've invested
Mhm.
my money, I invested my energy. I can't just walk away from the thing. Or it could be a little touch for a lot of people who engage with my work, because I'm an ex people pleaser. It could be a little bit of people pleasing.
Mhm.
And you don't want to tell the mentor, the family member, the friends, the family, people who have supported you, this really isn't what I want to do anymore. I want to do something else, or it doesn't look the way that I envisioned it. So I want to walk away from that and do something else. And so
Yeah.
your boldness to do that, I commend you in that. And I really encourage others to do the same, because again, you do have options, right? That's the simplistic way of saying that. You do have options. You can decide what you want to do, and you can change your mind. It's the whole, and I want to say it's on my heart. I'm gonna just say it's like the analogy of just like in a relationship. You don't want to lead a relationship. It's like, I put in all the time. I've supported the person. No, I can't leave. It should result in this. And sometimes you gotta walk away with nothing to keep your dignity, right? And to get the bigger thing that is out there for you. So I
Yeah.
commend you on that one. Um, and I know that will help somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to add a little bit more is it is scary to do that leap. I'm still scared. I'm human. I'm scared doing it, but the reason what scares me more is settling. And that's the honest truth. That scares me more because I know that feeling and it doesn't feel aligned. And I know that for me, that's very deep to say. So that's why it is scary. But just by being honest with you, Marthia, about this, I had an open window came up and you asked me to be on this like podcast. And that was an open window of practicing my communication skills just here. So opportunities will pop up when that leap we go through it. It's just so scary to do it. Yeah.
Yes, most definitely. I love that.
Mhm.
I love that addition. Did you face any other challenges while in the program? Did you get stuck anywhere else?
I did. I put expectations on myself on it's similar to the pressure, but I put expectations on I needed everything to be perfect. I needed to make sure I did this program correctly because I invested. I needed to do it right, quote unquote. And the thing is, like, I I'm going to say it again, slowing down was is the best thing that's helping me not just through the program, but in my life, just in general. Before making decisions, just slow down, see if it sits right with like you like for me, if it didn't sit right, like that personal mission statement, it felt right at first, and I sat with it, and I was like, "Nope, sorry, Marthia, I'm gonna have to pick your brains again because it is not sitting right with me." And that's when I had my aha moment of, but because I put expectations, I wasn't it things weren't clear to me because I was putting that pressure, that those high expectations, and you can name it perfection, however, and that's part of the people pleasing I grew up with. And I'm unlearning that now, which is helping me see more clearly on what I believe I'm meant to do here. So lowering my expectations on myself. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And so I'm going to stick with the same last two talking points, even though you touched on it, but still just want to give it its space so people can clearly hear it for someone that's listening. I know that needs to hear it again. What was your breakthrough, like the moment things turned around for you inside of the accelerator?
My breakthrough was when I realized that I am capable of more. I'm able to do more. And I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that I'm able to do a lot more than just staying in the position that I'm in right now. The breakthrough for me was really about, whoa, there's so much more I can do for myself, and I can involve my passions as well. And for me, that's so important to me because I want a career where I'm excited to go. I have this energy, I have this fired up feeling. And not saying I'm not happy where I'm at, but there is this unalignment feeling that I know that maybe I'm meant to move on now because I was there. I did what I had to do to prepare me for this next step. Right. Yeah. I hope I answered your question.
Did. I love that, most definitely. So career clarity most definitely was a final result for you. What did you have any other final results after completing the program?
That you're not alone. There's like a community, including myself, where we're trying to find, I'll speak for myself, there's a community, right? Just because there's different cohorts, really trying to seek what they're meant to do as a macro social worker. So it's so worth investing in yourself. I don't know. I'm very excited from what I my future holds, scared at the same time. I'm very honest about my feelings, but I know that because there's a community behind me, I can always go back to that community for support. So, yeah.
I love that. As we wrap up this conversation, what would you say to the person on the fence about joining the next cohort of the Micro to Macro Career Accelerator?
Yeah. If you feel unaligned right now, there's a reason why you're watching this episode. And I really hope you see your potential, and investing in yourself might change your life. So it did for me.
I love that. So thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate you. For those who are listening, if you are wanting to know more about the Micro to Macro Career Accelerator, if you're wanting to have a discussion about your needs, your goals, your desires, and to see if you will be a good fit for the accelerator, I strongly encourage you to visit macroandpaid.com and schedule a free 15-minute get to know you chat. Now is not the time to self-eliminate yourself. Like to I mean, like, no, I don't meet this. I don't meet that. I don't meet this. Schedule a get to know you chat. Let's talk about what your goals, needs, desires are, what your background is, what you think is your relevant experience. Because honestly, you don't have enough career information to really determine I wouldn't be a good fit. If anything in this conversation today resonated with you, you are most likely a good fit. I always tell people I don't appeal to every social worker, and I'm not trying to. But if something in this conversation was like, oh my goodness, that is what I'm experiencing, you most likely are a good fit, and I want to talk with you. So start by scheduling a free get to know you chat, and the link is at macroandpaid.com. The link is always below down in the episode show notes in the video description. So thank you so much, Celeste. Big things. Celeste is going, she's a part of the next generation of leaders and change makers, just like everyone else that I work with. And she truly has identified a gap. Right. That's the other thing that we didn't talk about inside of the accelerator. They do extensive research, looking at the job market about organizations that do the work that they want to do. And that was a large part of how Celeste got crystal clear about this work needs to be done outside of the system because she's identified a gap,
Mhm.
right? That's why
Yeah.
she settled for that second job, because she identified a need that's not being met. And that's after looking at multiple organizations doing different aspects of the work. So I'm excited to see what's going to come from all of this and your discovery, and I'm expecting big things. And so to everyone else, have a wonderful day. Happy macro career planning. Bye.